mysteries, hidden history, and the unexplained. Join William Collinson and Lee Strydom on Strange and Mysterious World.
Welcome to Season 3, Episode 16 of Strange and Mysterious World. Tonight we're going to be chatting about the not so famous but very famous MK Ultra. Now, the beginning MK Ultra was actually a conspiracy theory. I think, when back in the 60s and that people were saying there was this program. It was a huge conspiracy. Like, nah, crap, man, no such thing. And then in 1975, it actually leaked out to the world. And then there was an investigation that was set up by the US Senate. And yes, the CIA came back and said, yes, there was actually a program called MK Ultra, but that it stopped in 1973. Yeah, they ceased the things. But now so here's the thing. Let's take this back a little bit. So supposedly MK Ultra started in the early 1950s. It was a covert CIA operation or project that dealt with mind control and sort of torture. All right. So the idea about this was to create something called the Manchurian candidate, somebody that they would be able to control, whether it be through a substance, whether it be through constant kind of badgering of the mind, kind of giving them, like, you get somebody on the phone call and say, number 69, and then all of a sudden you space out and then you go and do whatever it is and you come back and you carry on your work and you never know what happened.
Okay. So it's like you're getting hypnotized and then they put like a word, like they say, like when you hear this, they hypnotize you and they say, when you hear this word, then you will go into a trance and then you'll meet at this location.
Yeah.
What are the word for it? What do they call it? Anyway.
Yeah. So anyway, so that was the idea. They wanted to create this person that they would be able to control without that person knowing it. Okay. So it started in the 50s and apparently it ended in the...
But they wanted to like be able to do it to like a group of people, or did they just wanted to just do it to...
No, they just... Okay, so the idea about this was there was a few reasons why they were looking at this. So the Russians were doing it, the Chinese were doing it, the North Koreans were doing it. They were looking into mind control. So now obviously the US didn't want to get left behind, so they decided no, they wanted to open up this program, and they also too wanted to go and check to see what was behind this and could they control it. Now, the CIA director at the time in the 1950s was a guy by the name of Alan Dulles. Okay, he now headed up this thing. He was the guy that said, okay, we're going to be doing this. He then hired a guy by the name of Sidney Gottlieb. Sidney Gottlieb, he was the oak that actually headed up this whole MK Ultra. Okay. And he was a chemist, so he was dealing with all these weird and wonderful drugs and all sorts of stuff. So the idea was how could they create a chemical or create a drug or create something, even if it was maybe sound technology, something to get your mind altered into such a way that they would be able to use you as an asset without you knowing it. Okay, so MK Ultra, like I said, started in the 50s, ended apparently the late 60s. And they used, if I'm telling you, hundreds of billions of dollars on this program. Okay. And they used to test on unwitting people. So they had no clue. They were using mentally ill patients. They were using your prisoners. They were using soldiers. You know what I mean? So these guys had no clue what was happening to them. So what was do you know what the biggest drug that they were using at this time was for this kind of stuff? LSD, yeah. So LSD was a huge proponent to MK Ultra. But then what they would do, they'd give LSD and then they would mix it with other substances, check to see if that works. No, that didn't work. Electroshock therapy. Remember when they put the bloody stuff on the temples and then they would shock you to shit? You remember that? Yeah, so they give you LSD and then they'd fucking shock the shit out of those. Like you'd have these guys go to the hospital, say, hey man, and there's actually a case of one of these people that took him to court eventually. This guy had lost a leg, and he went in for therapy because he kept seeing this phantom leg and it was itchy, and that phantom leg story. So
Yeah, yeah. 'Cause
he
my
went
dad's
into the
got one.
hospital. Yeah, he went into the hospital to try and get therapy for that. And these oaks, they experimented on him without him knowing. Drugs, this way. He said he slept for like fucking months. 6 months he was on a coma, and then it was this and it was that. It was actually quite hectic. But I'm going to take you back a little bit, okay? Because MK Ultra didn't start. MK Ultra, the name, started in the 50s, but it actually started way before that. Okay, so back in the late 1930s, Hitler, who obviously at that stage was running Germany, he had scientists looking into mind control and to torture. They were testing this stuff out already at that stage. Okay, by the end of 1945, when the World War II ended, do you remember what happened? There was an operation from America that happened at that time. And there was also something that happened at the same time in Russia, which you actually don't really know much about. Do you remember Operation Paperclip?
Yeah, when they brought the Nazi rocket scientists over to do the space race.
Yeah, 100%. It wasn't only the space race. They got a whole lot of people across. And one of the scientists and technicians, etc., had to do with mind control and torture.
Oh.
Okay. But so exactly as you said, the space race, aerodynamics, aeronautics, all that kind of stuff, cosmology. The Russians did the same, but the Russians actually did it before the Americans did it. So the Russians went in, stole 2,500 scientists. And Werner von Braun was one of them. Yeah, they put them on, because when they went into Berlin, they put them on these trains and they shipped them off to Russia. They had no choice. Most of them actually had no choice. They had to go as reparations for the war. Because remember, the Germans had killed over like 20 million Russians. It was quite a heavy thing. So they took 2,500 scientists. Werner von Braun was one of them, but he was released sometime later to come back. And he landed up going to America, Werner von Braun, because he was instrumental.
So America didn't even get the good ones.
No. So the Americans only got 1,600, dude.
Of like the leftovers.
Yeah.
The B grade.
Yeah.
Ah.
So
Okay.
now here's the problem. So that's why Russia actually.
The moon landing must be fake then, because if the Russians got all the good scientists for the rocket sciences and the Americans only got the B grade ones, no wonder the thing was fake.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if they get there, then they wouldn't have got there either. They obviously filmed it.
Yeah. No, well, we believe that, but that's just our theory. But the Russians took they took a lot of the Luftwaffe. The Luftwaffe in Germany was the Air Force. So the Air Force at those time in Germany had already developed jet engines. They had already developed these weird aircraft, like the Wing, almost looks like today's stealth fighters. That's where all that stuff came from. In Germany, they'd already started developing all that stuff. And the Russians actually went in and they took all of it out to Russia, and they started. That's why they were the first cosmonaut in space. They were the first, so they were ahead of the race.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they were ahead of the race, and the US were getting a bit worried now. So but now anyway, we're heading off into a little bit of a different direction there. But anyway, so let's switch back. So MK Ultra actually started way before that in Germany. Then the official name of MK Ultra started out in the 50s with Sidney Gottlieb. He ran the whole thing. All right, and as we said, the various methods of torture that they used, the various methods of mind-altering drugs that they used, it was a constant thing. I mean, there were a couple of things that they tried to get where it was they'd put something in your food, something in your drink, where you would eat it, you would be total amnesia. Okay, and then the next day you'd wake up and you'd like as if nothing happened. But we got that. We got that already. I mean, that actually came from there. That's those roofies.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? So
date rape drugs.
Exactly. So there's a lot of stuff that kind of dates back to those things. But anyway, so
What does MK Ultra stand for?
I don't know. It was just a code name for this project, because there was MK Ultra, then there was MK Naomi, there was MK. So there's a whole lot of other stuff. But
Oh, they just name it like a hurricane or something. Give it a
yeah,
chick's
yeah,
name.
yeah, probably. Now there were other programs that were also being run by the CIA at the time, which is the military using it. At the same time MK Ultra was going, there was MK Naomi, I think, was going at the same time, where MK Naomi had to do with more nothing to do with chemicals and stuff, but yeah, they would go out and they would blackmail people. They would put people under constant surveillance. So it was a very psychological thing, MK Naomi. That put you under psychological stress. You know what I mean? And yeah, they were trying to discredit you. They're trying to make sure, like, which they did. I mean, they did it on huge occasions. So that was running at the same time that MK Ultra was running. Now, MK Ultra was figured out in, like I said, it got leaked in 1975 to the public. The Senate then decided to do an investigation. The investigation, they had the Rockefeller Commission and the Church Commission. Okay, the two went and investigated what was going on with this. Now, you must remember, now I said Alan Dulles was the CIA director at the time when MK Ultra first started, but obviously he left as time went on. So there's another guy that was running the CIA at the time. His name was Richard Helms. And in 1973, when he was leaving office, he told the people to destroy all documentation on MK Ultra, all of it. Okay. Now, what does that tell you? That tells you that something was going on, and they've actually now switched to something hidden. Now it's gone underground. It's probably changed name, because it did actually change to MK Search. But from there, no one knows what happened. But it's gone underground, and it's, in my opinion, it's still actually going on today. But just obviously they're a lot more advanced now to where they were at that stage. But
Well, I mean, if you think about the pandemic that just happened, I mean, that was the biggest mind control operation that ever existed. So it's still happening.
yeah,
They could
the,
pull it off
the
over
CIA
the
was involved there.
whole
But this, yeah, the problem is the CIA have been involved with nearly everything, dude. Everything that's happened in this world, the CIA has been involved with, and it's all the bad stuff. You know what I mean?
So.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so we're going back to 1975. The two investigating teams that tried to go and investigate, but they were hampered because a lot of the stuff had been destroyed. So they had to rely on witnesses, like first-hand witnesses, people that had gone through it. They had to rely on people's testimony, and there were some documents found, but most of it had to deal with payments to various organizations involved with the experimentation. And at that stage, they'd figured out that 36 institutes, including universities, were involved with M culture. Okay. That later changed in 2018 when the Freedom of Information Act came out with a document that was released. That actually changed to 86 institutions involved with it. Okay.
So many people in.
This also, in 1957, MK Ultra actually also crossed borders. It went over across to Canada. And there's a Dr. Cameron that was in charge there. But he was a bit of a mullion, a bit of a maddock. Okay, so it also went across there, and they were testing all that kind of stuff. So, you know what to go from Dr. Cameron. Now, to be operating this stuff for almost 20 years, dude, there's no ways it stopped. You know what I mean? It would have stopped maybe in a year or two when they realized, okay, no, this actually doesn't work.
Okay. Yeah, but it's the same like with the remote viewing program. I mean, that didn't have to do anything with torture or whatever, but it was a very fringe thing. They did that for 20 years, and then they said they closed it down, but they're still doing it. I mean, Joe McMonagle, even one of the most famous remote viewers of all time, actually says that, yeah, no, it's like they just do it as a contract work now, or they change the name or whatever. I think those things, whenever they say it's stopped, they just
carry on. Well, there was a guy by the name of Victor Marchetti. He served in the CIA for 14 years. In 1977, he was a veteran at this stage. And they interviewed him. And he said, look, the CIA on a regular basis do disinformation campaigns. Okay. And that whole story about MK Ultra is now been abandoned. He says it's just a cover story. So that was actually in an interview in 1977.
You reckon they're still kidnapping people under the, like, not knowing and giving them shocks and LSD?
Okay, so what had happened is right in the beginning, this is now before, I think it was President Ford got involved, but right in the beginning, it was unwritten. People didn't know. And they were actually using it to blackmail. So they would they would get hold of someone that was quite famous and lure them into a room where the prozzies were with prostitutes. Okay, obviously this guy would go, and then they would like, he would unknown, but they would have like, they would give him something to eat or food, and and he's got LSD now in the shit, and he's like tripping, and they're filming him, like exactly like this bloody Epstein Island shit story, and this other guy that was that's now in prison as well. It's the same kind of story. They were filming them, and they had now the goods on them.
Okay.
So
now they can just shock them as much as they want. They're like, yeah,
no, but then the law changed, because at that time there was no oversight. So they were just given money, and they would say, okay, there, go ahead, do what you want to do, and they would go to town and do whatever, hurt whoever. It didn't really matter whether you were an American, whether you were a foreigner, doesn't matter, dude. They were there to just get this stuff going. So they didn't care. And then President Ford, when he came in, he actually said, no. This rule will now change. If you want to get involved with any type of experimentation with whatever department, there has to be a consent given by the person. So they would have to go and sign forms to say, yes, I give my consent. And there were actually one of the guys that gave consent was the guy that wrote One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Ah, interesting.
Do you remember that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you remember how bloody twisted that movie was?
Yeah, eventually they like lobotomized him at the end and cut out his head because he was just couldn't handle it anymore.
Yeah, correct. So now he said, yeah, cool, you can do experiments on me. So they did. And he actually approved the LSD, and it was because of him the whole hippie movement started.
As it leaked, LSD leak out of MK Ultra and start the whole 60s.
Well, it actually came from this guy from the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He started the whole hippie movement with the LSD. Because he was raving about it. He said, fucking LSD is this and that. Wow, blah, blah, blah.
What did he go like, oh, I just came back from the CIA program and they just shot
No, I don't think he would have told anybody that story.
They like hypnotized me and I like, someone's come back after 30 days of not knowing where I am, but they gave me the stuff, man.
And they gave us, the guy's name was Ken Casey. He actually started the hippie movement.
A little bit sore and like, I don't know, I got like all these marks all over me and that, but geez, the stuff that they gave me, look at.
That's fucking, can't believe. But I mean, look, we know where LSD takes you. So, yeah, I can understand why the hippie movement started.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it kind of, in my opinion, it kind of went underground. But you must also remember now what had happened in this period, because now we've got the Cold War going. All right. So you've got the war between Russia, China, mostly Russia and America, but China was involved a little bit. But mostly between Russia and America. And if you really look at it, it was actually German and German. Because it was literally all the German scientists were in America, German scientists in Russia, they were competing. That's kind of what it was all about. And then JFK became president. Okay. Now, so MK Ultra, I'm gonna park it a little bit, MK Ultra now. Okay, because up to that stage, there's not a terrible amount of information that we kind of understand, besides the witnesses that came forward and they said, this is what they did on this is how it was. They sued the government and, the government had to pay out X amount of money. But we know that the program existed, okay? We know that they were trying to develop someone that would be able to assassinate or do some sort of job and not know about it later. Okay, so we know that was their goal. That was their goal, was to do that. Okay. Did they get it right? Did they get that right? Okay, so now we go up a little bit now. JFK is now in office. I think it was Alan Dulles, either Alan Dulles or Richard Helms. It was one of the two now who were in charge. I can't remember exactly who it was, but it was one of the CIA directors. They did not like JFK at all. Okay. Do you remember something called the Bay of Pigs?
Yeah.
Okay. So these guys went behind his back and they tried to get Fidel Castro overthrown by so-called his own people. But they had trained up a whole lot of Cuban soldiers, and they dropped him on the beach, and the Oaks were supposed to go in, but these guys knew they were coming and wiped them out. It was like a total farce. I mean, there was massive media about it. Fidel Castro is just like, you know what I mean? So it was a massive, massive, massive thing, but it was a massive failure for America. Now, this CIA director was not happy with JFK, because when they went to JFK, he originally said, no, you're not going to do that. Leave it. Because remember, the nukes were in Cuba. So that's why the American kind of military guys wanted to get in there, take him out and take out the nukes, because it was too close to home.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, don't worry about it. I'll sort him out. We'll talk about it. They were not happy about that. So what does that mean? That means that he's now got an enemy. And I'm 90% sure it was actually Alan Dulles. Okay. So now, what happens? He gets assassinated. Boom. Okay. The whole story, what happened from there was, it was one shooter, Lee Harvey Oswald. Okay. But now, so let's actually look at this, because now there were some documents that were released recently of the JFK files. Yeah, about a month or so ago they were released. So let's look at it. Let's actually look at this now. So the Warren Commission, these are the guys that were actually looking into the assassination of JFK. Okay. Who was in the Warren Commission, William? Who was in the Warren Commission?
I'm not sure.
One of them, Alan Dulles,
Okay.
MK Ultra starter.
Okay.
Okay. And the guy that didn't like President Kennedy. How do you have a guy to be in the commission investigating the murder that had a huge dislike for JFK and was involved in MK Ultra? He was like that started it all. Okay. So now you've got a bit of a conspiracy thing going on. Yeah. So what really happened? What was the case? Because if you go and look at the story, he was directed to go that certain route, because that originally wasn't the route that they planned to do. He was supposed to go in a closed top car. He was just supposed to drive through, but they said, no. His people that were riding, no, open up the top, open up the lid. You must drive this route. If you don't drive this route, we've got to cancel the whole thing. So he went along with it. Okay. So now let's go to Lee Harvey Oswald. He spent time in Russia. We know that. He was in Russia for actually quite a long time, because the Russians kept an eye on him. They kept saying, he was part of the Russian KGB, and that he actually wasn't. They kept an eye on him because he was a person of interest. And in one of their reports, they actually reckon he's probably the worst shot they've ever seen. Okay, this guy couldn't fucking shoot a rifle to save his life.
Was that one of the recent reports, or was that one of the old?
That is one of the recent reports. Okay, so that's the one thing. The second thing is he was married to a Russian chick, and they were always fighting with each other. So he hated Russia. He wanted to get back to America, which he ended up going back to America. But 2 weeks before the assassination, who does he meet? 2 weeks before the assassination, who does he meet?
What's his name?
Jack Ruby.
Jack Ruby.
Jack Ruby was the guy that killed him after the assassination. Okay. So they knew each other. And there's documentation of that.
Is that the new documentation, or is that from the old stuff?
That's the new documentation.
Ah, okay.
So they knew each other.
So I thought nothing came out of those new documents. So actually
No,
some,
there were little bits and pieces of things. But I think with the new docs, everybody knew that the CIA was behind it, and they've been behind every bad thing since then. I think
yeah,
everybody knows it. It's just you got to try and find the gun. So they knew each other. The whole theory about one gunman came from the commission, who was led by, or who was Dulles was in it.
yes,
The theory about more than one gunman was, even though the autopsy report said no, there was definitely more than one direction, because the bullets were coming in different directions. Even the
yeah,
autopsy says that, dudes, but they decided, and there were witnesses that said they heard shots coming from high up in one section, and
yeah,
from
yeah,
also where apparently Lee Harvey Oswald was.
yeah,
Okay, but they said no, 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 and they ran with that story that there was only one shooter. That's already been proved to be out. Okay, but there were people that were, so when Lee Harvey Oswald was taken into questioning, the people said that he was very like he wasn't himself. Not to say that you've just killed someone and you've been arrested, that you're now you're a different person, but they seemed like he was almost out of it. He wasn't quite
yeah. Like
himself.
they drugged him, or they said that keyword from the
Yes,
hypnotism.
it almost came. The
Suddenly
people were saying
turned
he was
into zombie.
his stories were changing. He was unsure about certain things. He said, "No, none of this," and then no, no, no. Actually, maybe it was that. And so he was very confused. Things were happening. And people say, "Yeah, but that's probably just the stress from being caught for whatever the story is." I'm telling you, it's not that's not the case. It almost seems like he had been drugged, or something had been altered in his mind, and something happened, and he was now the patsy because he didn't kill the oak. I think he might have shot at the guy, missed him completely, or maybe hit him somewhere, but it didn't kill him. The
Or they
main
just
killing shot
pumped him
came
full
from
of
further from
LS,
elsewhere.
pumped him full of LSD, and then like quickly just put him in that room, locked the door, and put a gun with him, and then like they shot him, and then yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So now we start. This is a bit of a conspiracy theory. So yes, I've got to admit that. But now we're going into
But I
okay.
mean,
So,
what do they say about conspiracy theories? They say conspiracy theorists are 6 months ahead of the curve, and
correct,
sci-fi writers are 50 to 100 years ahead of the curve.
100%.
So
So we slightly ahead of the curve.
yeah, so
So,
it's, yeah,
but it doesn't make sense where you've got people that are involved in other projects and they keep cropping up at different spots. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So was he actually somebody that was had been the Manchurian candidate? Was he a Manchurian candidate where they could control him and he did X, Y, and Z? And before he could actually go and explain and say, actually, guys, I think this is actually what might have been the thing, because he was killed by the guy I met 2 weeks ago.
Mm.
Okay, by Jack Ruby. So we know that there's a problem. And then there was Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and Robert Kennedy. Okay, all three of these guys were a threat. The CIA saw them as a threat to the country. The CIA and the FBI, because J. Edgar Hoover felt that Martin Luther King and um, Malcolm X were threats. So they put them under constant security. They did the whole blackmailing thing. They did this, they did that. But the people that killed them, again, it was the same sort of thing. They arrest this guy. He's like, what's going on? Why are you arresting me? And then they take him and they say, no, and they keep him there for hours. And eventually he said, I was not involved in any of this stuff. And eventually he says, okay, no, I did it. But then when he explains it, somebody else, a witness says, no, 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 that's not what happened. The guy was shot from behind. He got shot in the back of the head. I think that was Kennedy. So all of these assassins seem to be, it was almost like it was directed by somebody else, because a lot of the people said with these people that were arrested didn't seem like they were themselves.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
So
So was MK Ultra, did it eventually become actually usable?
well, I mean, just think about the guy that tried to assassinate Trump. I mean, that guy, he didn't have any Facebook profiles or any no history, whatever, and somehow he was like I don't know, like programmed or believed that he must go and shoot Trump for some reason. I mean, I reckon he was totally programmed by someone or something to go and do that.
But again, okay, so again, it's the CIA that's involved with the Trump thing.
Yeah.
So what happened?
I mean,
That oak, he was killed. No autopsy. They went straight to crematorium.
yeah.
How does that work? How do you do that? That's like, and there was actually, I think it was, I'm trying to remember the podcast that I listened to, the Benny show. He said they went out to where the shooting took place. Okay. And where the roof is, as a Secret Service agents or agency, you're supposed to be you're supposed to plant somebody almost on the highest spot in the area so that you got overwatch, so that you can see anything that is happening below you.
Yeah.
And there was a water tower that was off to the I think just behind the stage where Donald was. They didn't have anybody posted up there. So they say, but how come? You're supposed to have somebody up there, because that oak would have seen it straight away and would have shot that oak before he even had a chance to look in his scope.
That guy was on it. They said they didn't want to put any of the FBI guys or the security on that roof because it was too slanted. But I mean, what are these guys, like a bunch of what are they, a bunch of like Girl Scouts that they can't get onto the slant? Sorry, I didn't want to rip off the girls, but like, I mean, like, come on, you're a security guy, and then the sniper that was on a roof, he was on a way more slanted roof than that, and it wasn't even a direct view of Trump. No, that thing was a total like.
No, of course, man. Of course, it was a setup, and I think it was the Democrat Party that actually set the whole thing up. Yes, that's just a conspiracy theory, so don't come and take me out for it. That's just my theory. But of course, man, they didn't want to, man. Because all the havoc is causing with the Democrats and then arresting them. And I mean, that whole bloody COVID story, as we mentioned earlier with Dr. Fauci, we all know now that it was just one big fucking lie, dude.
Yeah,
so we know they were all behind it.
Oh my gosh, and you must see, dude, I've been reading this book. It's called Serious Adverse Events, an Uncensored History of AIDS. Dude, and you must see like this whole AIDS epidemic and the HIV thing. Like, I mean, oh my God, that thing. I mean, we must get this lady that actually wrote the book. I mean, it is the craziest thing I've ever heard. It's like it's probably worse than the COVID. What happened to the COVID, and the politics that were involved behind that, and in the drugs, this AZT thing that came out that Anthony Fauci was actually in charge of, and they wouldn't even give this drug to cancer patients because it was so toxic. So Anthony Fauci was like, no, let's just give it to the AIDS guys, and then like. And they said, this is the best thing we got, but it just killed them because it was so toxic and these people were dying anyway. But then, I mean, look, I wanted to go into it too far because if you want a conspiracy, dude, this thing is wild. And Anthony Fauci was involved again, dude, and it was the exact same tactics as what they used with the pandemic. And there was this one guy that was a virologist that was like the top virologist in the world, old Duisberg,
Douchebag.
Yeah, douchebag. Yeah, they totally made him out to be a douchebag. Peter Duisberg. Duisberg.
Douchebag.
And then he wrote this book. Inventing the AIDS virus. Dude, that book just blew my mind. So I started reading this, Inventing the AIDS virus. I mean, it is the most wildest thing. I mean, if people listening to this think that COVID was a fucking shit show, you must listen to the early stages of when the AIDS pandemic took off. I'm not saying that AIDS is not a thing. That is a thing. And they didn't say that either. They're not saying that AIDS is not a thing. That is a thing. And HIV is a thing. I'm not saying that either. But the thing is, it's something completely different to what we have been told. It is like so fucking out there. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it, how crazy it is.
So you're saying it was created, like the coronavirus was actually created in a lab?
Not created, but there's things with the testing things that were like mismanaged. The the people that were getting paid to like spread like different rumors and different, and the hype and the way that they put the fear into people, and the drug companies, how they jumped on board, and all these like NGOs just were making billions and billions of money when nothing was happening. I mean, for 20 years, no one found a cure because they completely misinterpret what it really was, because they just were in it for the money. They were just trying to spread as much fear and pandemonia as possible. So they douchebag, the only guy, douchebag, that was saying that it's not what we think it is, it's this other thing. They completely shunned him. Like a scientist that even said his name would also get banished from the scientific community because they all wanted it to be this one thing. And then the whole thing about like, you're an AIDS denier, you can't say, because they just wanted this one narrative to go off. So anybody that said something opposite would be completely squashed, completely. They didn't have Twitter then, so you wouldn't get banished off Twitter or YouTube, but you would get banished, your career would get squashed, you would get thrown. Like, so no one was allowed to actually challenge the narrative that they were spreading there. And they fucking destroyed people's careers and scientific reputation, everything, because they wanted this one narrative to go this one way. And the thing is, and they were saying that if you challenged their theory, you were an AIDS denier and you were killing millions of people. But in the end of the day, they were killing millions of people because they were looking in the wrong place. They didn't even get the fucking virus right in the first place. So they were the fuck ups.
So who was paying the people?
Well, it was all
Anthony
Fauci's bloody the NR, whatever, the people, the representation of America that anything that runs, anything from the scientific community has to run through them first before they approve it to go to media. So they actually are the gatekeepers to any information, and they hold the whole narrative because they're the government body and it actually came out of the government. It came out of the military because it was to regulate in World War II, like everybody in the military that should get healthy and what they should be treated with. So it came out of there. So it was a military thing, and it became the government department, and then it controlled the media. So and it's the same thing. They did the exact same tactics in COVID. They fucking the exact playbook that they did with the AIDS pandemic. They did it with the COVID. It was like I can't even tell you how. It was almost like they just took that whole playbook and they used it for COVID. And David Fauci was the one that was involved, the head of the whole thing again. And that's why the AIDS thing is such a fuck up, because they weren't even looking at the right place. They weren't looking at the right thing, because they were running with this narrative, because everyone was making so much money from it and profit, and their egos didn't want to get squashed.
But that's why I think that's why he was given a pardon. That's why when Biden was leaving office, he pardoned him. And it wasn't just for the last section. It was actually since he started, which is, I think, back in 2010 or something. He was pardoned for anything that happened up until that stage.
And yeah. And then also the funny thing was that, like, Einstein, right? Obviously you know Einstein, but he when he came up with this theory of relativity, this is this lady, the Celia, let me get her name here, Celia Farber, and I've actually been in email contact with her, so because I was so interested in her book with Series of Reactions. She was saying that when Einstein came up with a theory of relativity, he was persecuted from the Nazis, and they had 2,000 Nazi scientists making a petition. Okay, don't quote me, it might be 200. I don't know if it's 200 or 2,000, but they made a petition to say that Einstein's theory of relativity is wrong, and it's Jewish science, and that they shunned upon it, and it shouldn't be, and it's wrong. Mm-hmm. And it had 200. So then, you know what Einstein's comeback was for that? He said, why so many people to sign that thing when you only need one with proof? I mean, and it's also the same thing with the COVID thing. They had all those people signing. Oh, it wasn't from the lab. But then why would you have thousands of people having to sign something when, if you just need one person with the proof? It's so dodgy that why would you have to have so many people signing this thing? Because they actually don't know. There's no proof. That's why you have to have an army to say, oh, this is what we think it. So the same thing happened with Duisberg as well, when he was saying this AIDS thing is something else. It's not what we think it is. Then he had to, and then the funny thing is that because they were getting it so wrong, and there was no result on the AIDS virus for 20 years. They couldn't solve it. They couldn't fix it. They couldn't whatever. So then there was 600. Yeah, this one it's 600 PhD scientists that said they want to reopen the Duisberg theory and his thing, and also 3 Nobel laureate Nobel winners wanted the Peter Duisberg's scientific research to be reestablished. And then the media was saying there's not one single scientist, there's not one single respectable scientist that supports Peter Duisberg. Meanwhile, there's 3 Nobel laureates and 600 PhD scientists that support it. So it's just, it's remarkable. Actually, we should should have one of these guys on. We should get him.
That's cool. I just want to flip back quickly just to 2 of the killers, the guy that killed Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy quickly. No, we went on a bit of a tangent there, but that's fine. I'll end off with these 2. I'll end it with these 2. Yeah, we could carry on with that then. So Martin Luther King Jr. was killed by a guy by the name of James Earl Ray. Okay.
Yeah.
So when people that were around him, when witnesses came forward, they said, and people that actually knew him, they came forward and they said, look, he had erratic travel patterns. He used multiple aliases, hinting at possible handler involvement. So it's almost as if there was a handler that was maybe from the CIA that was handling him, directing him. Yeah, go there, go this, go. You use this, use that. Okay. He admitted to being influenced by an individual known as Raoul. His sudden change in plea from not guilty to guilty almost seemed that was either coercion or hypnosis. They either put him, he was either coerced to do anything or he was put under hypnosis to plea, because he constantly said he was not guilty. The lack of awareness about key details of the attack, his convenient apprehension and confession seemed very quickly. It was too quick. They wanted to get it done quickly and then it's over. They didn't want this thing to drag out. Okay. And then the guy that killed Robert F. Kennedy, his name was Sirhan. Okay. Even today, still, he says he has no memory of the shooting at all. Okay. Psychological experts have suggested that his behavior bore signs of post-hypnotic suggestion. His journal had pages and pages of RFK must die, RFK must die, RFK must die, RFK must die. So that kind of almost suggests preconditioning to get him to that point of, like we were saying earlier, probably that MK and Naomi. They were getting him to that point of you see that word, you go for it. Okay. Witness reported him appearing to be in a trance-like state during the assassination. Witnesses noted that his behavior and demeanor were very strange. Testimony suggested that there were multiple shooters, and in this case, they still said no, it was only him. But there were testimony. There's people that said no, there was actually quite a few people that were shooting. Security footage for that day was not allowed in the court. They disallowed it.
Jeez.
Okay. Testimonies from individuals who saw suspicious activity around Sirhan was also not allowed at court. And the autopsy suggests that the fatal shot came from an angle inconsistent with where this Oak Sirhan was standing. So somebody else killed him. So yeah, that ends my thing for MK Ultra. So did MK Ultra actually eventually work? Did they get to a point where they were able to use somebody to do these things? And it seems like it's possible that this is the case. Yeah.
Sure, they did it, yeah, and they've done it, and they did it with that Trump, the guy that tried to kill Trump.
Yeah, well, yeah, but again, it just kind of fascinates me. It's seriously, seriously fascinating about what lengths people will go to get rid of someone like that. And it's not like he was Hitler, and the shit that was going on in Germany was, because I can understand why people try to assassinate Hitler. I think they tried to assassinate him like 27 times. Hitler, they never got it right. They never ever got it right. So it was like I can understand because of the atrocities that was going on and what he was doing, and I understand that, you know. But I mean, for this other shit, kill JFK because you don't like him, and he was against what you were saying, and you want to assassinate him because you don't like the dude. I mean, it just doesn't make sense,
But
dude.
it's so funny because they also say that there's all those conspiracy theories that it was because he knew the UFO stuff. Well, firstly, because he knew that we couldn't land on the moon. That was like he eventually realized like fuck, actually, I know we said we're going to the moon, but it's actually not fucking possible. And then the other one was that he actually knew about the aliens, UFOs, and he wanted to disclose that. And then he also, because he was banging Marilyn Monroe at the time, and he was having all that pillow talk with her, obviously pillow talk, like after
Yeah.
while she's smoking a cigarette, and he just starts telling her about the UFOs and he can't make it to the moon, and also, hey, also about Cuba that so he's like, so that's what also then they took
Took
out
her out as well.
as well. But yeah, it'd be interesting. I wish we could know. Oh yeah, and MK Ultra. He's also like, oh yeah, but about this MK Ultra thing.
Yeah. So my opinion is still going on. I think they've probably got it right to actually. I think they've got it right. So yeah. Whether it works all the time, I don't think so, because the oaks maybe kind of like this other oak, he was caught. Well, actually, luckily Donald Trump turned his head, otherwise he would be dead.
Yeah.
That oak shot him in the pip, dude. He would have been, if he had not turned his head, it would have been in the brain, lower section.
Yeah.
So he was
But
he was a sharp shooter, but luckily he turned his head, dude.
oh no, that was like fucking weird how that happened. But anyway, we should do one on Marilyn Monroe, like what happened there with her, because that's a whole another conspiracy. Jeez. Because then they blamed it on that she overdosed on Mandrax. That she was taking Mandrax and she
Yeah,
overdosed on that.
dude, they'll find any excuse. They have to, because can you imagine now it comes out that these oaks were involved in nearly every single assassination plot and or assassination that happened to all these
Like every big
high individuals, dude.
9/11,
Jeez, like, eh?
all the assassinations, the 9/11s. Yeah.
Yeah, the 9/11, all that stuff. I mean, 9/11 is another story, dude. I mean, if you go and watch that documentary when they're interviewing the firemen, the fire department, the Los Angeles,
Yeah.
what's it? The New York Fire Department, when they interviewed them, they all those guys were saying, listen, these buildings, there were explosions in the basement, and that's
Yeah,
what
and
collapsed
also,
the buildings.
dude, you must check
And
out
the
Tucker
CIA's
Carlson.
involved there again, dude. They wanted to go into Afghanistan and start
Yeah, but
the
I mean,
war.
like, I don't know if anybody's been listening to all of Tucker Carlson on I don't know if it's on X or on YouTube, but his podcast, he's been really bringing out some really cool guys for the 9/11 stuff, like really interesting, and some top people that are involved in government that are coming out now about the 9/11 stuff. He's been having them on his show. He says he's going to do a whole series of them. And I mean, they obviously mention all of the same stuff about like Building 7, how did that collapse, and
Building 7
how
was
did
like
the
nowhere near, dude. That thing
and how
didn't
did
fall
how
over.
did
It actually was a demolition. You could see it. It fell down like a demolition.
yeah. So, but it's interesting now that there's some top guys that have been working in the government have been coming out onto Tucker's show recently and going on about that, and they've been calling for Trump to like get involved. But I think Trump's too interested in taking over Greenland now and the fucking Gulf of Mexico. And like
Yeah.
it's causing the economy to crash with the tariff war that he done. I think he's not going to go for the. What's it? Oh, fuck. Anyway,
Anyway,
we
yeah.
don't want to get political on the show.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Anyway, guys, yeah. That was our MK Ultra conspiracy, not conspiracy theory for this week. And we'll definitely, yeah, we'll have some more conspiracies on, and a lot of the stuff that comes through might be a conspiracy, but then if you put two and two together, it kind of forms a pattern. And it's
No,
not
but that's
just
also
like
the word conspiracy comes from the CIA. They used
yes, they
that
did.
for
Yeah,
what is that word? It was Mockingbird, Project Mockingbird, to
yeah,
try and discredit anybody that came against anything that their narrative that they wanted to spread. They came out with the word conspiracy, and they've started labeling people with the word conspiracy. So it all comes from the CIA, which is interesting. Whether you're doing a thing on the in culture and the CIA. So even the word now you're saying like, oh, sorry, we were making a conspiracy, whatever. It's they fucking put that into our lexicon, that whole word, the zeitgeist.
yeah, no, 100%. Anyway, well, yeah, cool, man. Thanks for your time tonight again, and for all you guys that are listening. Hope you enjoyed that one. And yeah, we'll see you, or you'll hear us next week. Have a good
All right.
week, guys, ahead, and we'll have a good one, bud.
Yeah, and also sorry about the quality of this picture and my sound. I'm just on holiday in
You're in
Namibia.
Blikkiesfontein.
Blikkiesfontein.
You're out in the sticks. You're out in the middle of the bundus.
Yeah.
You're in the nowhere.
And I just came to see my parents. I've got some funny stories with my parents. So we'll do it on our other podcast, the Tits one.
Tits.
But
Yeah.
that's two idiots talking shit. It's not. We're not talking about.
Yeah.
What
Two
you
Idiots
like.
Talking
You're
Shit
always
podcast.
thinking
Guys,
and
go and listen if you're not listening. Yeah, that's our comedy podcast. It's a very short one normally. But our second episode is coming out actually soon. So yeah, cool. Like a
Okay.
dudes. Like a dude.
Guys, cheers, Lee.
Cheers, bud.